If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Hello, and you're very welcome to Treaty Talk episode 281. John Keogh is joining myself, Tom Clancy, once again this week to run the rule over everything in Gaelic Games in Limerick this past week. And of course, as ever, to look forward to plenty of action in the weekend to come. John, there's only one place I think to start this weekend. I'm kind of with a bit of a wry smile. I think you're similar. There's no All-Irelands handed out in May. There's no Munster Championships handed out in May. But nevertheless, a body blow to Limerick, but not a fatal one in terms of hurling. So I suppose your initial thoughts on maybe the result before we get into the nitty-gritty of what went on in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last Saturday evening.
Yeah, Tom, you're right. There is only one place to start. The result, a tricky one really, because Limerick had the game in their hands, you know, when they were 3-4 points up after that great comeback from Flanagan's third goal. There was only one winner, but Cork stayed at it. You know, like for periods in the game, Cork were by far the better team, obviously in the first half, but they played some lovely hurling in the second half as well, in fairness to them, and Limerick played in patches. I don't think very few people could argue the result. You know, we could talk here into the early hours about everything that happened in the game. We'll do our best to condense it, I know. But the result itself, few could argue that Cork weren't merited that 2 points. You know, but I mentioned it the last few weeks. You know, John Kiely's fairly honest in his post-match. You know, summations of what happens on the field at any given time, and I think he was right. I think Limerick, you know, paid for what was such an uncharacteristic first half performance. You could say they weren't at their best against Clare, but they were so well off in the first half by their own admission that, you know, it was so uncharacteristic. It was akin to the 2021 first half Munster final against Tipperary, where Tipper ran riot at will, and Cork did something similar. So the result itself, you know, where you could be disappointed as a Limerick fan that Limerick didn't see it out, over the balance of things, you couldn't really argue too much for Cork coming away with the victory. Yeah,
and you mentioned that first half, and that was, I guess, where the damage was done, and even John Kiely alluded to that in terms of you just can't leave yourself with a hill or a mountain to climb every day, because, you know, while they turned it around against the Banner, you know, ultimately they did turn it around against Cork, but, you know, just, I suppose, then it was flipped back on them. So I suppose they left themselves with too much to do. But what do you feel went wrong in that first half? I mean, listening to a lot of the commentary and a lot of the narrative about it since, like, a lot of it had to do with Cork's puckouts, but it's an area where Limerick have dominated teams. So why did Cork get so much joy on their own puckouts, in terms of, like, they went very much route one, like, that certainly to my eye anyway. It went nice and long in around Limerick's half-back line, which is one of Limerick's great strengths. But they got so much joy. But for Nicky Quaid, Limerick could have had 4, if not 5 goals conceded at half-time, which I don't think either of us in a million years would have envisaged. You know, and I suppose that's why he's there, to make those saves too. But, like, it very, very porous defensive work by Limerick. And look, we're quick to praise, but I suppose we should be quick to maybe point out the flaws in Limerick's performance. And there was more than a few, John, in that first 35.
There was, Tom, yeah, no question. Look, Cork had a strong breeze in the first half, and they utilised it. And like we can talk about breezes don't win games. They don't win games. But if you have a gale in your possession, you know, in that first half, if you're playing with that kind of an advantage and you don't make full use of it, you're in trouble. Look, Cork went route one, sometimes directly from Patrick Collins, sometimes from a sharp puck out, and he came out to the 14 or close to the 21 to launch it downfield. Look, Cork got the breaks. That's not all of it, but Cork did get a lot of breaks. Shane Barrett with an outrageous flick at one stage for one of the goals in the first half, and it landed a Cork man. What was really impressive from Cork was, I think you'd be able to maybe, and I wasn't at the game, and I know you were, you'd maybe be able to enhance this more from watching it at home. Their movement, the second the ball was pucked out, was outstanding. They really, really ran, hunting for breaks. Tom, is how I'd put it. Yeah, they've won immediate possession from puck outs as well, and then offloaded the ball, but they were breaking the ball, and the runners were coming on at pace, and nothing beats that kind of pace, Tom. You gamble, you always hear in other sports, in every sport, about a player gambling, and that's what Cork did to me. For me, anyway, watching it at home, they gambled and they kept gambling, and they got great reward from it. There was oceans of space in the Limerick defence. The Cork, the movement of the Cork forwards just confused Limerick completely. So many times, Seamus Harnedy was left in plenty of space, but he wasn't the only one. It seemed to be a pattern throughout the game. And again, when a ball lands around the 40 or the 21 and you're breaking onto that at pace, sure the goal is there in front of you. As you said, Nicky Quaid made some outrageous saves that kept Limerick in the game. Look, you have to bring it into as well that this was all or everything for Cork. That they had nothing else. I'm not saying for 1 second Limerick were taking this game lightly. Of course they weren't. They don't allow that kind of complacency usually, and I don't know if this is complacency or not, but they were so far off it in that first half that they just had no answer to Cork. And funnily enough, in the second half, all that dried up. There was certainly nowhere near as porous in that second half until Shane Kingston came on. He started causing a few problems late on, and we'll get onto that kind of stuff later on. But that first half, as you said, it was so uncharacteristic that you'd have to put it down to a one-off unless we see it next week against Waterford, which I doubt very much that we will do, given the way Limerick played in that second half. Certainly in the half-back line where most of the problems seem to come. That's where the gaps were in behind that half-back line and in front of the full forward line. But yeah, it was the uncharacteristic nature of seeing the ball landing and Limerick not being the ones to sweep it up. Cork were coming at pace where Limerick were kind of static. That's what I took from it anyway, Tom. And then, watching the game back, it hasn't changed my mind on that. Just Cork maybe wanted it more, maybe needed it more. And they had their tactics, but the movement off the ball was phenomenal from Cork. They really had I wouldn't say homework done, because every team has so much homework done on each other anyway, and they all know each other so well now with this round robin, play each other so much that trying to find something new is very difficult for the tactical analysis within the management setups. But for me, yeah, that direct nature, and it's something that Limerick are usually so adept at handling. But the old saying goes, sometimes your strengths can be your weaknesses, and Cork exploited maybe a lack of pace, Tom. It's very hard to say that as well when Limerick are usually so solid in defence. And I've said it the last few weeks, with each team that plays Limerick, they need to score 3 goals or more. And funnily enough, the way it turned out, that's how it went in the end for Cork with the late penalty. But yeah, just going back to the first half, Tom, I think Limerick were well off the pace that Cork brought to it. I think that's says more about Cork than it does Limerick in a way. But yeah, to see that Limerick defence so open was a worry, and maybe blueprints for other teams that Tipperary tried it, in 2021 with so much success in the Munster final, that you would have thought other teams would have tried it since. Kilkenny have got a bit of joy about going direct at Limerick in both Championship and League, but Limerick have, outside of the League semi-finalists, Limerick have found a way to beat Kilkenny in each of the last 2 All-Ireland finals. But yeah, look, more credit to Cork that they tried something, Tom. It was all on the line for them, and to win 8 points up at the end of that first half was a huge fill-up for them.
Yeah, certainly was. And I suppose you mentioned me being at the game, and I had one of the best seats in the house on the halfway line to witness this, thankfully. But I suppose Cork, yeah, did get a couple of breaks, and maybe some people will say Limerick often get those breaks. But I suppose there was a design element to their puck out in terms of, their main. Sometimes as you hear defenders or coaches saying to defenders, get the ball to ground. Cork didn't mind if it went to ground because they had runners and they had guys who would break onto it at like Shane Barrett, Seamus Harnedy, these guys, and obviously some of their puckouts were cleanly won and they had runners. I suppose, as you know, John, as a team's defending, if there's a guy coming at pace and you are static from a long kind of dropping puck out, very hard for a defender to be alive and you know, ready to go backwards, and that's maybe why they got so many goal opportunities. As well, I think they really pinned the Limerick full back line back. They didn't do what teams tend to do against Limerick and end up having players so far out from goal, which meant that, you know, there was never a case where a puck out would hit the floor and Barry Nash would scoop it up and he'd be away and Limerick would attack. But they made sure that Limerick's 3 deepest defenders, certainly on paper anyway, were in fact their deepest defenders and you know, occupied that space. So yeah, it was interesting to see. There was so much going on though, John. You know yourself, sometimes when you're at these games you miss so much. I'd no replays available like maybe Villa at home. So much happening. But like Limerick, in fairness to them, had bright moments in the first half. Kyle Hayes' run for Seamus Flanagan's first point, that was a great moment. It really kind of got the crowd going and we said, right, Limerick are in this game. Seamus Flanagan then took on a point from, I was going to say the car park, but like maybe the concession stand or something was more like it. He was like, it was about like 9 meters from the end line, about 10 meters in from the sideline, and he just arrowed it over. I saw the replay of it there on Sunday evening. It was some score altogether. Limerick then kind of forced a turnover from a short puck out, which, you know, has been a staple of their game. Aaron Gallan blocking down a clearance basically, you know, but having the hurley nice and high, blocked down, lovely little hand pass back to Flanagan, and what a finish. But to concede a goal straight like that against that was very unlike Limerick. To concede a goal, I think maybe 50, 60 seconds or even less, you know. And
Yeah, it was directly
kind of felt like the Limerick crowd were in it now. Flanagan has brought us back to, was it back to 2, I think it was. Next thing, Cork up, rattle a goal, Cork are settled again. Limerick are kind of, you know, pulling their hair out.
That goal gave Cork that second momentum in the first half where
they finished,
you know, Limerick had fought their way back after such a slow start, and you know, Garrett Hegarty was getting on ball, Kyle Hayes with the runs, as you said. I thought Kyle was outstanding again. Again, we'll talk about the penalty incident later, but his overall performance, I thought, was just out of this world. Really, really in adversity. Look, we're not going to get into any of that, but just outstanding. And you know, there was a belt. Look, the cameras didn't pick it up, so you know it's hard to comment on when it hasn't been picked up. But the belt he did receive, look, I think there was no one in any doubt. Certainly on TV, we all know where Kyle was hit. But you know, going back to what you're saying, Tom, to concede that goal so directly from the puck out is so unlike Limerick, as you said, and so uncharacteristic. Because when they usually get lifts like that, they dominate the game in the next 5 minutes, and they pile on the scores and the pressure. And look, I think it was Seamus Harnedy ran onto that break, and you know, the ball was laid off, and they worked the goal. It was a brilliant goal from Cork's perspective again, but from their point of view, they didn't panic Cork either. And that, you know, up to now, even looking at the sideline, the call to remove Owen Downey and bring on Damien Cahalane, much maligned Damien Cahalane as well. And you know, Pat Ryan knew it was all or bust and made the calls. You know, in that first half, you know, second half was a very different game for so many different reasons. You just thought when Flanagan was gotten going, Gallan was looking, as he always was, so dangerous. Hegarty was finding pockets of space, but wasn't being found more often than not. He was breaking free from his marker all game long, and you could see that on screen as well. I'm sure it was more apparent in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as well. So with Limerick being in such a strong, you know, momentum period after that goal and just before that goal, you were thinking things were going to kick on. But obviously, look, Cork going up 9 points then soon after that goal, they really tacked on the scores, really tacked on the pressure. You mentioned Seamus Harnedy and Shane Barrett. I want to mention Darragh Fitzgibbon, who was a constant thorn throughout the game. Tired in the second half, naturally, given the amount of work he did in that first half. But even then, he was still a danger throughout the second half as well. And the running game Cork had, you know, you hear so often that, Cork need to get rid of the likes of Harnedy, Horgan, their day is done. But if their day is done, Tom, you know, there's hope for all of us, you know, because you're watching Patrick Horgan, there's an argument that he moves away from goals to pop over points. He doesn't want to take the ball on. I mean, he was just outrageous at times with his ability. He was picking out passes as well. And Harnedy, to me, is a Rolls Royce of a hurler. Really came onto the, he's just so good, so consistent. And there's no lack of pace in Seamus Harnedy, I can tell you. And ask any of the Limerick defenders that were trying to chase him. But, it's that to concede, to go back to that point, to concede that goal. It was a bit of a blow, like, it was more than a bit of a blow. It gave Limerick a mountain to climb, because Cork took so much confidence in that response, that usually it's something they would have fallen down on so often over the last number of years, that Cork, when you get at them, when Limerick did it in the 2021 All-Ireland final, it was a train. They got that, Limerick got the goal early from Gerard Hegarty, and Cork responded with, I think it was Gerard Hegarty's goal, or maybe it was Gillan's goal, but they responded immediately from Shane Kingston. Cork are capable of opening up Limerick. They've shown that time and time again. And that's why I was saying last week, Cork were maybe the one team in Munster that were capable of scoring those 3 goals to beat Limerick. And as I said, it turned out that be the case for them on it. But, I think John Kiley said it to you after the game, that, that disappointment in the first half. And Limerick will have to look at it, Tom. Slow enough starts against Tipperary and Clare, although the opening quarter, and John Kiley said this after that game against Clare, Limerick did a lot of good things in that opening quarter, and
just didn't show up.
4 points to 2 up at one stage, and it was a tight, tense game. You've been tennis, yourself, you were there. It's a tight field. Things can happen, and you can get a momentum swing, and you can be scoring points from 100 yards in 3 shots, and that's what can happen. So. But Limerick start the games, Tipperary one maybe not so much, they were going score for score really with Tip. But you can't give teams like Cork, and you can't give teams at any level, 8-9 point leads with a half a hurling gone. You certainly can't do it at inter-county level. You certainly can't do it in the Munster or Senior Hurling Championship as well, Tom. It's just you're leaving yourself time and time again with a mountain to climb, and you're not going to do it every game. And that's what Limerick have done now twice. Yeah, they managed to get back into it, but as I said, we will get into detail about the final stages of that game. But maybe part of the reason they couldn't kick on 6-7 points ahead was the amount of energy they expended in getting to that stage of
25 minutes
4
after
points.
halftime.
And they couldn't put Cork away. In fairness to Cork, they stuck at it. They could have dropped their heads, but again, a wounded animal, Tom, has a reaction. They can have a reaction. They can fight for their lives, and that's exactly what Cork did.
Yeah, and we actually saw that from Cork against Clare as well, because they went from 7, they were 7 up against Clare, and then they went maybe 5 or 6 down. And in fairness, they finished strongly, even with 14 men. So there is that kick in Cork, to be fair to them. And even the game against Waterford, they were down to 14 men. They finished with a goal and a point, to put it back to a score, basically. So, in fairness to Cork, they've never thrown in the towel, and I suppose why would they, with such a backing? And I suppose maybe I haven't touched on it. I don't think I've heard too many people touching this week, but home advantage, maybe we thought earlier in the competition, and some games it doesn't seem to be a factor. But I think genuinely, and it's not to say Limerick weren't supported or weren't backed by the people who went down, they're far from it, but that ferociousness in the Cork support, they gave them, they started so well that they got the oxygen from the supporters, and they really played heart in the sleeve stuff, as it were, and they fed off that. If that was in the Gaelic grounds, maybe Limerick would have, kind of stifled it. But to be fair, Cork played with emotion, and I suppose highlighted for me by the yellow card shown to Pat Ryan and Paul Kinnock. Paul Kinnock just snuck along the sideline. I think it was actually after Seamus Flanagan scored that point after Kyle Hayes' run, I think it was. Paul Kinnock was going down just to tell Dermot Burns, or maybe it was Sean Finn something. I presume he was just telling them the winning lottery numbers from the 8 o'clock draw or something like that. Not more than that, but Pat Ryan took exception to it, and again, it just created that bit of kind of, what's it, siege mentality? Is that the phrase I'm looking for? Just to say, well, hang on a second, how are the All-Ireland champions? How are they allowed to do that? And bit of words on the line, and John Kiley got involved. And in fairness to Cork, they got their emotion right. Now, I would caveat all that by saying, can they pick it up for next week? Now, we'll come to those games in due course, but they certainly fed off the energy of the crowd. I mean, 41,000 people in there. Obviously, I would say maybe 60% of them probably Cork, and the rest Limerick, I would imagine. But in fairness to Cork, they got their emotion pitch right. They didn't overdo it in the tackle and get sent off, like get anyone sent off like they did against Clare. And maybe the case in point was that was took a taking off their fullback. He was actually booked in the same passage of play as I just mentioned there with Pat Ryan, so they whipped him off fairly sharpish. And you know, they're the things you need to do against Limerick. If you 14 men against Limerick will they'll pretty much murder you. That's probably a strong word, but they can do, like, you know. And in fairness to Cork, they got a lot of things right on the line and on the pitch on the day. But I suppose to flip it back to Limerick, John, like we were talking last week about who be in and who be out, in the case of Peter Casey, and I suppose we were kind of maybe saying James Flanagan. I certainly was pushing for him, and now I don't think I'd envisaged him scoring 3 goals and 3 points per play, but it's probably going to be forgotten about in the grand scheme of things. But an exhibition really of full forward play. I mean, he's just in the right place at the right times. I mentioned a couple of the points he got earlier on. You know, he's a runner off the shoulder for Kyle Hayes. Takes one then from out on the sideline, again gets another one in the second half, as well as the goals. Like, some real varied play, but a real target man for Limerick. And obviously Limerick was struggling at times to link the play as they do with the short hand passes, stick passes, and there they have a man who, you know, was in red hot form. And now I mustn't forget Gerard Hegarty's contribution in all this. He set up 2 of the goals. Did he get, was it 4 points himself as well? So there was 2 men that I'd safe to say, you know, brought their A game down to this game. And like, it's good to see for Seamus, because like some people are quick to forget what he's capable of doing in the Limerick jersey.
Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, we were speculating, would Limerick throw Red Herring in with Adam English in that full forward line? They didn't. They went back to, not that they ever went away from Seamus Flanagan. He just didn't start against Tipperary. Didn't play any part against Tipperary from the bench either. If I think I'm right, I don't remember him coming on.
No, he didn't
against Tip anyway. But look, doubt any of these Limerick players at your peril is what I'd say on that. Jamie Flanagan. I remember seeing Jamie Flanagan for the first time. He was playing minor, which was under 18s back then, as a 15-year-old against my own club, and he got a goal that day that was just wow. It's the only way to describe it, you know. And look, Jamie has an abundance of talent, an abundance of, you know, fortitude is the word I'll use as well. Like, he had a poor game against Clare. I'm sure he'd be the first to admit that. You know, there's no point saying that. Maybe worked at his sharpness in the preceding weeks. I'm absolutely sure of one thing, that there was no hesitation in putting Seamus Flanagan back into that Limerick team. It was just other players were in better form. David Reedy had a fine, you know, opening 2 games, a bit quieter against Cork, no question. Cathal O'Neill, I thought as well, just to add to what you were saying about Garrod Shamey, you know, I thought he was outstanding throughout the game.
Yeah,
and even when he went back wing back, it really looked, you know, that Limerick trying him there in the league to finish the game, and Declan Hannon limped off. You know, that's, you know, maybe they've unearthed, and I think that we will see Cathal O'Neill more in the half back, but I thought he was outstanding throughout. But come back to Shamey, yeah, outrageous performance. And I think watching him for so long now, he is a confidence player. I think, you know, you go to you mentioned it last week as well. I think that the 7 points in the 2022 Munster final in Thurles against Clare, he was untouchable that day. He was untouchable on Saturday. You know, that great performance against Clare last year in defeat, as it turns out, again when Clare beat Limerick at the 2 Gaelic grounds. He got the goal against Waterford that got Limerick over the line, you know, in the opening game of the championship. I'm not going to keep going on with all the things Jamie Flanagan's done. He's a perfect foil for Aaron Gillan when they're both on form, you know. And to see him score, look, the most important score for me from him was the first one, which was a relatively easy one. If I remember, one you would expect him to score. He came back in the arc.
Yeah, that was the Kyle Hayes run, wasn't it?
Yeah, after Kyle's run, yeah. And
Limerick did need a score then.
They did need a score. Yeah. They needed the second one more, Tom. You said the concession stand of the car park. The angle was ridiculous. They showed it 6 or 7 times, I think, in the replays on the TV. And it was just, I think he wouldn't have taken that shot on if he hadn't scored the first one. He can kind of be a streaky player like that, but when the streak is hot, he's untouchable, Tom. The goals were taken so well. You know, yes, 2 of them from Cork mistakes, and you could say mistakes, or a brilliant play from Limerick, 2 turnovers. The one from Aaron Gillan blocking, reading a brilliant, you know, Sean O'Donoghue was lax in his pass, but it still needed someone to intercept, and that's what Gillan did, and worked it brilliantly to Seamus. Seamus finished it superbly. Second one, Garrod with the turnover as well.
But John, sorry, just to go back to the first goal, even to even to not put the ball into his hand, because if he put it into his hand, he'd probably been swallowed up from behind or from the front and probably blocked,
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest of
just
passes from Aaron. Yeah.
no, but like just one touch, bang,
I go back to confidence, Tom. The touch was superb. He was able to do exactly what he wanted with the ball, which was bounce it in front of the keeper, because the keeper isn't saving that from that distance, no matter who they are, even if they are Nicky Quaid, who did make some saves similar. But again, we can talk about that again. But and then the third goal, but you knew by the third goal, he wasn't missing it. The chance was there, bang, and it was finished superbly. And there are a ton of positives to take from that performance, believe it or not.
Yeah. No,
outside of that first half, from a defensive point of view, from a forward point of view, Tom Marcy was back to a good bit of form. We mentioned Gerard Hegarty, Jamie and Aaron, again, perfect inside. Cahill playing very, very well, dovetailing from the half back line and into midfield, switching with Keane every so often, and it caused Cork a lot of problems, but Cork were getting so much joy at the other end. I think a lot of people watching him were focusing more on what that was happening there than what was happening in Limerick's forward line. But then the second half, I thought Limerick pulled off, and immediately I think it was Cahill with the first score of the half, or was it Keane? It was Keane off his left, 7 seconds into the half.
Yeah, that point, John, I kind of said to our colleague in the media world, Stephen Barry, who's beside me as a neutral, and kind of said, we're in business here now. And he said, what do you mean? I said, it was the type of score that Limerick score a lot. They won the throw-in. I think there's a bit of a 1-2. They didn't rush the ball forward. They didn't just hit it into the full forward line for a second, but a bit of a weave, bit of a spin off the shoulder.
Yeah.
And, it was kind of like, right, these lads are focused again.
They're on it straight away into the second half. Yeah. And so those positives coming on, you had Adam English coming on, making an impact immediately. Aidan O'Connor coming on with that great score, and we both know. You probably more so than me, you've seen more of Aidan, but I've watched Aidan from a very young age with Limerick underage teams and with Ballybrown as well. He's a good a talent as what's out there, Tom. And to see him being trusted into that, cauldron of an atmosphere, and to be, I think he got one possession, Tom, and threw it over the bar, maybe two possessions and laid one off, an immediate impact and a telling impact as well. And Limerick's bench, coming to the fore again, ultimately in defeat. But, it's not all doom and gloom. You lose a game in controversial circumstances, what I call. I know we will touch on that, but those are the thin margins in Munster, and that not even Munster. Look, we don't usually delve too much in Leinster's, the Leinster Hurling Championship, Senior Hurling Championship. Too often here we do have a brief mention, but we don't go deep diving But to see Dublin top of that after 3 games, Carlow drawing with Kilkenny, any result seems to be possible in every game. Antrim beating Wexford hammering Galway. Got Carlow getting that magnificent result after being hammered by Galway, I think it was, up early on, and Dublin very quietly going about their business, and it's a funny one. It's just so tight, Tom. It's so tight in both championships, and Munster just tells you every time, you think you've everything figured out. Limerick are going to do this and this. They've improved from the Clare game, beat Tipperary handy, relatively handy. And then, they're met with everything at Cork side. And I said it last week as well. I think, Tom, we agreed. I think we knew this performance was in this Cork team. I think everyone, including Cork people, were waiting for it to happen. And it was still almost in defeat. And you saw the outpouring of emotion after the game with the amount of people onto the field and everything that went with it. Seen photographs before the game that emerged of Patrick Horgan not being allowed onto the field with a hurley and this kind of crack. And, I don't know. I just thought it was old style, Munster. It was as if it was a knockout, that Cork had reached the Munster final, or reached an All-Ireland final. It was great scenes, Tom. Look, if you take it from a purely GA point of view, great scenes in amidst the conversation about the game being on terrestrial television or pay-per-view and stuff. And it gave a lot of people a lot of credence. Monday morning on the local radio and national radio stations, with regards to GA Go and games being on RT and all that kind of stuff. Tom, it put that argument aside for a moment, just a moment, mind you, to see that level of a game of hurling, and that's what should be talked about most. The result from a Limerick point of view was disappointing, but what an absolutely amazing game of hurling. From minute 1 to minute 74 or 5 or whatever it was, there was something happening. There was no break. It was a constant barrage of skill, of heart, of Fortitude is a word I'd use again. There was just everything you'd ever wish for in a game of hurling was on show at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. And if that's the standard, that is now the standard for the championship for me. And it's up to everyone else to reach that standard now.
Yeah, and certainly, John, being there, the atmosphere, I don't think I've heard a volume like it. Even in Croke Park, when you'd have virtually double the attendance, it was deafening now, to be perfectly honest with you, from early on. I think the first Cork goal kind of woke me from my Saturday evening slumber and said, right, we're on for an occasion here. And obviously the Cork goal at the end, another roof raiser, but yeah, it's certainly a game. Look, we'd love to see Limerick win, but a game you'd struggle to forget, really. We'll probably be talking about it again in 5, 10, 15 years. At the time anyway, or as of now, it's the highest scoring game in Munster Championship history. So that'll tell you that, as you said there was so much going on. Basically a score a minute or just under that, and you throw in a few other incidents on top of that, and there was always something happening. As I said, mentioned already, sideline issues with the late black card, which I think we'll discuss right now, other bits and pieces, and yeah, just the colour and noise, even the way the tickets were done. From my viewpoint, the North Stand, you had a pocket of red and green kind of checkered throughout, more or less, of course, and obviously some people will infiltrate tickets in the other county from whatever other way they have. But no, fantastic occasion. What the GA really is about. Even I was trying to get parking, and there was just people everywhere. 2 hours before throw-in, spilling into bars, walking out with their kids, whatever it was. And of course the weather, as we know, will always add to an occasion like that. So yeah, look, great to have been there. Unfortunately, from a Limerick point of view, the result didn't go Limerick's way, but as I said at the start, no silverware handed out this month. It's early next month and beyond is where Limerick are looking for. But just to finish up on the game itself, John, the black card, I don't think anyone from Limerick, who has their heads kind of screwed on, would say it wasn't a black card, it wasn't a penalty. I think it's exactly why the rule has been brought in.
I'm going to disagree with you here.
Maybe John's going to disagree. Okay,
yeah, well, I am vehemently going to disagree with it.
Right.
I'm not. The referees, Tom, right? Number one, we make a point of not criticizing referees a huge amount, and I'm not going to go in the Sean Stack too hard either, because I thought actually a lot of it, I thought Cork were getting frees in the second half in particular, though a little bit handier than maybe they should have. I think there was a bit of play acting going on, and more power to them. If it works, it works. Good luck to you. But yeah. I would argue that in the end, the two of the vital decisions in the game were wrong. I wasn't at the game, so it's difficult for me to say about whether a whistle was blown for the puck out that led to the penalty and the black card. You may be able to enlighten me on that. Every referee in any game I've played in goals has told me to wait for a whistle before the game for if a score is made. If a ball goes wide, you have a very different conversation at the referee's discretion. You know more on the rules than me as well, Tom, having done the refereeing course, where I think to restart play from a score, that the whistle has to be blown.
That's my understanding of it, yeah, and that's certainly how it is interpreted. Sometimes these rules are interpreted, but I'd say every referee is basically, and I've seen it in senior club games across Limerick, where referees will say to the managers or the goalkeepers for the game, lads, on a wide ball, just kind of go more or less go straight away. But on a score, I just need that 2 or 3 seconds to note the score and wait for the whistle. But 2 whistles basically, one when it's over the bar and the other one then to you're signaling a score and then out.
So on that front, I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that a whistle was blown. I've watched the game back.
Yeah.
On that one, and I've no issue with the speed of which Patrick Collins got the ball from the umpire. That's the umpire's job. Nicky Quaid was getting them fairly quick off the umpires when they had them in the pockets in the first half and second half. That to me is a moot point. I don't see any issue with that. Again, Patrick Collins still supposed to wait for the referees, whistle on that front. So Shane Kingston ran into space. I think Limerick thought they had a bit of time, left him where he was, and we're reorganising, following Aidan O'Connor's point. I will say this. Shane Kingston gets the ball, 50 yards from goal, 60 yards from goal. And we try not to talk about cynical play and try not to promote it, but you and I both know the realities of that is there were several opportunities for Shane Kingston to be taken down.
There was
make it a
one
1
player
point
in particular maybe that people would have cited most, probably Jeremy Burns. Ball flicked over his head, and maybe if you thought it was a good time to hug,
I know.
Good time to hug Shane Kingston would have been there, maybe, you know.
Yeah, and look, that let's not beat around the bush. That it's all about winning, Tom, and you know. So a great run from Shane Barrett, but he was moving away from goals each time. Now I know that's not in the rule, right? So direct goal scoring opportunities is what a cynical play that I think that's the word, not exact wording, but a cynical foul that prevents a goal scoring opportunity, a direct goal scoring opportunity. So Shane,
but it was a cynical foul.
No question to cynicism. I'm arguing that.
Yeah.
My argument is
we'll tick that box. Yeah,
that's perfectly fine. You couldn't find a more cynical foul if you looked for it, and that's
probably a bad tackle in rugby, was it?
That's it. I know. I think it was okay for rugby, but that's a black card all day long. I can't. Yeah. If we're talking about black cards in general, you want. The question I have is the angle Shane Kingston was at. You know, I just, and there was certainly Cathal O'Neill coming around, and there was another Limerick defender in close proximity. So my understanding, in every black card for this incident I've seen up to now, there was no defender between the player and the goal. That's the only argument. Now, I'm not arguing the result of the game or anything like that, Tom, but I will argue those decisions because, you know, I think without one, you don't have the other. If the referee should exactly what he should, if he hasn't blown that whistle, that ball should be going back into Patrick Collins's hand. End of story. So the other one is kind of irrelevant in a sense. Now that's been let go, so we have to talk about the other one. And I genuinely believe that Cathal O'Neill was getting around. I'd have to watch it again to see the other Limerick player.
My interpretation of Cathal O'Neill in this is Cathal O'Neill caught up. I think was it William O'Donoghue who was next behind him. Maybe it was kind of thereabouts as well when it all stopped. I actually think Cathal O'Neill only gets there because the play is stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, because you know what I mean. So if Kyle Hayes just goes in with a hurley and tries to stop him, Cathal O'Neill is probably a little bit too far back for him to do anything about it. That'll be my read of it. You know.
Yeah, but no, look, this is the point of these decisions. It's, you know, you'd argue, but one doesn't happen without the other, and it's not sour grapes from Limerick point of view. I've already said, fair play to Cork. They took advantage of everything they could in the game, and good luck to them for it. I'd be worried if Limerick didn't do something similar, or any team that you'd be involved in or support or whatever else. I just think, you know, at that exact moment in a game, you need a cool head from a referee. And Sean Stack is a young ref; he's an up and coming ref, and you won't hear me criticize him blatantly for any other thing than those two incidents in the game. To be honest, I know I mentioned maybe Cork got free is a bit handier than what Limerick did, but that's always a perception, maybe rather than the rule or than the reality. It just, when you're watching a game, you're like, I'm probably watching that game because I'm not working at it as a Limerick fan, but you're seeing, is that soft? You're seeing more things on the screen at home, Tom. You know that you don't get the value of maybe when you're at a match and there isn't a screen available if you're working. But you know, that's what I'll say in it. I definitely think the issue with the puck out, you know, I just, because I played in goals so often, for so
and because
long,
he'd pulled it in the first half for
exactly,
Cork,
and
well,
there's
you know,
there's the infuriating thing. That's the infuriating thing, is consistency with decisions. If a referee, Tom, you know, the game's to be refereed from second one to the last second of the game in the exact same way at all times, you know. So something you pull up in the first minute, you should be pulling up in the 72nd minute. If you know what I'm saying. And that's not what happened if Kyle
Hayes did that foul, you know, in the first minute, should
30
be
30 seconds into the game, it's a black card, and penalty on your interpretation of it. Fair enough. But and this is the point I make. There's arguments. I've seen arguments for both. Definite black card, penalty. Seamus Hickey was on Coke on the day. He was full of praise for Sean Stack's performance, and I've no real argument outside of those two decisions. One leads to another, as I said, and one wouldn't have happened without the other. But it's a very, very interesting one that That's been the first black card given in the championship this year, I think. Certainly in the Munster championship, I don't recall in the games I've seen anyway this year. And I think there's been more cynical.
No, Cork had one against Waterford for a penalty. That again, it was
Penalty.
actually similar enough position on the pitch. I can't think of the player. Was it Robert Downey? No, I could be wrong. I can't which defender it was, but that was a penalty, and it was a bit disputed because there was a defender in front of the attacker, and it was attacked from behind.
What I'd say in this is, okay, that's been given, right? That's the standard now of player goes through, he's fouled cynically. Forget about the angle, forget about players around. He's fouled cynically. And as you're saying, if there's a player around like there was in the Cork Waterford game, well, that's still a black card and penalty. If that's the case, it's not just a free, 21-yard free or 21-meter free and whatever else with it. So if that is the case, you need to see it in every game. You need to see, because we both know what happens off the ball. Referees, if they're going to do this right, and the officials that guide the referees, if they're going to do this right, things need to be called up. The umpires need to be given more power. The linesmen need to be given more power, because there's so many things happening off the ball. It's a wider discussion about the merits of 2 referees at intercounty games, and something to help referees. I'm not fully sure about bringing in any more video technology than we already have. For instance, but a second referee, I've seen a trial in other sports. It works very well in the Aussie rules. In Australia, they tried it in rugby league for a while. I think it was very successful in rugby league. I'm not quite sure now. You have a wider argument about the amount of referees, but how many officials are at a game? You have a 4th official there. You have the 2 linesmen that are also referees, and you have the 4 umpires. At intercounty, at the highest of highest, there's so much at stake. Referees need more help, and I'm not talking about. I'm gone off that incident, but on a bit of a tangent. But in general, referees need more help across the board at every level and at every time. I'm just saying, this rule has been brought in for cynical fouls, right, in and around the goal scoring area, and absolutely the right call, because we want to see more goals. Goals are what makes the sport so exciting. You see a ball rattled into the net. There's no better sound in a game. You said it about the first and third Cork goals, the roar that came up from the crowd. We want to see goal scores. We want to see goal scoring opportunities. Yeah. But it has to be refereed consistently, and everything has to be refereed consistently. And that's what will drive, what will drive players mad. That was what will drive, managers mad, coaches mad, fans mad. And me and you could argue this for the rest of the day and still come out with your opinion and my opinion. And that's the beauty of sport as well.
Yes.
I see it one way, you see it another way, and thousands of differences in between as well. So I just think I can take the fact that at the time it looked, on replays, it looked something different to me. But at that exact time, when that whistle was blown by Sean Stack, it looked a black card and a penalty from the angle I saw it on screen, and probably from the angle he was. Yeah, I've more of an issue with the ball being poked out before the whistle was blown. Yeah, because it gave Cork an unfair advantage.
I've watched just we might finish up on that now in terms of hurling that match, but I've watched back Aidan O'Connor's point, lovely score, and by the time the kind of camera work followed, the ball was already in the halfway line. Like it's like I was kind of trying to time it roughly. It's like 3 seconds, like from the ball, like going high, crossing the crossbar, Limerick people up out of their seats, pumping the air and all the rest of it.
The referee didn't have time to note the score before the ball.
Next thing they cut, and Shane Kingston is like on the Limerick 65, with the ball in his hand. So he's already made a run, caught the ball, which I presume, I don't know how long it takes the ball to go from goals to 65. It's probably like 1 point something seconds. But like, and Patrick Collins, I still had to get the sliotar after the ball went over the bar. So like, he as he should do, he should push the boundaries of the referees.
Absolutely.
Thing, and like there would have been an almighty groan if he said, no, Shane, hit it back into the keeper, go again. But I suppose it would have been right in terms of, was the whistle blown?
And again, I'll go back.
That's as a tough call as you would probably get, because there's probably 25,000 plus Cork people or whatever it is there, and they're 2 points down now in stoppage time. There's like 60 seconds of the 4 left, and if he's to tell them to go back for puck out, like that's a pressure call as much as giving Kyle Hayes a black card is a pressure call, So look, yeah, the one thing I could think, one solution I would have for referees at intercounty level is they should not be taking the score.
Yeah,
They,
absolutely agree.
or they have
Absolutely
4 umpires now, and I suppose maybe I could be wrong to say that some of them probably don't. Like, I don't, they probably don't. But like, it should
my experience in that, and I've done umpiring at intercounty level, not the white hot heat of that kind of level, but it's usually one umpire would take it at one end. In my experience now, with the referees I've done umpiring for, one would take it at one end and one would take it at the other, and the referee would double, triple check in that sense.
Yes.
I would think I wouldn't put that responsibility to umpires. I think there's a fourth official there, and
that's it. Yeah. Or
all we're seeing fourth official,
some other
way of doing it.
He's a time official, or he looks after the subs.
I take the time away from referees as well.
I would think an extra official on the sideline is one to probably marshal the managers and all the rest of it.
I don't think that needs marshalling.
But nevertheless, if
there's a linesman there for that, then
if there was an extra body then who focuses on keeping track of the time and the score, and maybe you could relay a few other duties onto him or her, certainly would free up the referee, and we could have our quick book outs then, and that would be fine. It would be the standard across across the thing.
And just to finish on it again, I want to reiterate, I'm not having a pop at referees here, not by a long shot, but again, having played in goals for whatever amount of time in my life,
we were pulled back many times for quick
many times, and that's why when John Kiley had a gripe after the game, it was that, and it was the decision to not allow, that's a whole wider thing, and the messages onto the pitch, which I think is, I don't know, look, there's just some rules at times and laws, and you just go,
and fairness to John Kiley,
decisions off the field that wouldn't have been near the field in 30 years. Like,
and fairness to John Kiley, he caveated all that by saying Cork were worthy of their win, and
I'd agree 100%,
and that those gripes are shared by probably Pat Ryan and others across 100%. The game.
It's all about, we're isolating incidents from a Limerick perspective, obviously. I'm sure Cork people will have plenty of those with the referee, as well. It's the nature of the beast. And Sean Stack, as I said, he's refereeing intercounty level now for a good few years. He's still a very young referee from a family steeped in GA. I'm not for once questioning anything in his integrity or anything else. But I think the speed of what happened in that, as you said, from the time Aidan O'Connor puts the ball over the bar to Patrick Collins receiving a slitter in his hand from the umpire extremely quickly to get the game moving again.
He actually had a slitter. He had a slitter in his hand before the other one hit the ground.
Before the ball hit the ground, it was over the bar, but it wasn't long over the bar.
I'll tell you how quick he was,
Yeah, and again, I will reiterate how difficult it is for referees and things you've mentioned there. I would be in favour of anything that helps the referees do it again, because playing it at the level we've played at, it's a very difficult game to referee. When you go up, I don't know how many octaves up to the standard where we are at inter-county level, quite a number of them. It's on a different stratosphere, and you see these referees will make mistakes. They don't do it deliberately. They don't go out to have bad games. And again, I'm not saying Sean Stack is a number of any of these things, but mistakes when they happen, Tom, have to be highlighted too. The second one, we can argue one way or another. The first one is very, very clear in that if he'd let that happen earlier in the game for both teams, there wouldn't be an argument. The fact that there is, because he's missed something, it's a shame, and it led to the second incident, which ended up, of course, with a penalty for Cork that Patrick Horgan still had to score, which he did emphatically, and they tacked on another point to emphasize it then, and more power to them. They were the better team, probably edged the game all over. And what it's done, Tom, which again, we're coming at things from a Limerick perspective, what it's done for the Munster Championship is it's opened it up completely. It's wide open now.
Everyone still has a chance.
Yeah, but I will say this to finish, and we might touch on Limerick Waterford next week. But what it has done is clarified Limerick's, what they need to do, win or draw against Waterford, and they're through to a Munster final. I think that's correct. But they're certainly through. They're certainly through. To the All Ireland series with a draw. What it has done is clarified that for Limerick, and has set up this weekend coming, which will be, brilliant. The 2 games on, I think both are on RT as well this weekend. We won't get into that, drag it back to that argument we had, or that discussion. We didn't have an argument, but that discussion of last week, the GAA go stuff, because it's gone plenty from where we had it last week. But, it has opened up the championship. It has crystallised. And I will say this as well. Limerick are in a position now where they won their first 2 games. They lost to Cork. The 4 points out of a possible 6. Would you have given this? Would John Kiley have taken this situation, go 1 game to go, and your fate been in your own hands? Because it certainly wasn't last year.
Yeah, with a home game to come.
With a home game to come against a team. I can't remember the last time Waterford beat Limerick in a championship game in 2 scale of grounds difference since the home and away stuff. But could
be a decade from my quick rattle of my brain. It's probably. I don't think John Kiley's ever lost to Watford. I don't think so. On that,
I don't think so. Not at championship level anyway. So I think John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk and the rest of the Limerick backroom staff and players would have bitten their hand off to be in this position. Going into the final game. They would have loved to be in an even better position, but look, that's not the case. One thing I do want to point out, we haven't touched it. Look, another injury issue for Limerick. Stock Darrow Donovan and Mike Casey might be back for the next game. Just want to highlight Fergal O'Connor's his performance, Tom. He started nervously, as you can imagine.
Baptism of fire, John, because
baptism of fire isn't even coming close to it. And this is the beauty, and I've said this in the last few weeks. You're seeing a very different not outlook, but a very different, look to the Limerick bench now.
Yeah, the supporting cast, as it were, and not to put them in that category, but what I mean. The guys that are trying to force their way in,
You've Adam English. Look, Conor Boylan has been thereabouts for a while.
Yeah.
You've Adam English. You've Aidan O'Connor. You've Fergal O'Connor. These guys. The 4 of them been brought out. Donegal O'Donnell came on. 4 of the 5 subs brought on, Tom, are in their first championship year. I know Adam played last year, but you know what I mean. First full year, and to see the trust.
And I think only Conor Boylan has actually started the championship game. So
of that group,
that'll tell you the lack of experience at that
experience, but trust in management to put them into it, and shows the talent that we sometimes do forget, and you see the impact Cathal O'Neill and the time he's had to put in to force his way into that. Into that starting 15 now, which he probably is a mainstay now. You're not going to get Cathal O'Neill off that team too easy, because he's got his chance to start from the off in Clare. He was one of the better performances throughout that game. Certainly was against Tipperary. Took it up to another level against Cork. So these guys are making impacts when they're coming in. That's what John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk want. But for Fergal O'Connor on championship debut to be thrown into that, to do so many good, as I said, nervy start to the second half because he was just brought on at the end of the first with the first ball that came into him. But I think he won pretty much every possession after that and laid off brilliant ball and won a free as well. So, that's a huge fill-up for his confidence going into a game against Waterford where he may be having to start his first championship game in such an important one, given Limerick's injury issues in the position. But, I just wanted to highlight that. We spoke with Aidan O'Connor, we've spoken with Adam English and Donegal O'Donnell plenty of times, but to see, a guy who was part of the panel last year, under minor and under 20 full back. He's grown so much. I remember seeing him. You were down the game, the Park he ran last year, Limerick and Cork in the Munster Hurling League, and I think that was his first start for the Limerick seniors.
And
was just exceptional in that game. And he's got better and better with Effin. He's moved out to halfback or midfield with Effin in the Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship in Limerick. And you see him then excelling more and more. And you saw him at Fitzgibbon Cup level being one of the best cornerbacks in the competition. And he's just brought that into his league form at Limerick. He had an outstanding league up until the concussion against Kilkenny in the league semi-final. He's come back from that again. Just fantastic to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I suppose Sean Finn's fitness probably not going to be there for the final round against Waterford. So I suppose if Limerick season goes beyond that, they'll be hoping to get Sean and indeed Mike Casey back up to full health. Two men with hamstring problems. Hopefully they can be resolved in double quick time. John, I will not dwell too long on this week's fixtures. Limerick, of course, with their bye week, as it were. If you could call them maybe, somebody briefly anyway, Tip against Cork, that's in Thurles, and Clare against Waterford. I suppose the Tip game first, what way do you see that one going?
The big thing here, Tom, isn't really tip. I don't think it's Cork. Can Cork follow up what they've shown? Because that's the next level for Cork. They have to show that consistency. That's their barometer, and that's what it needs to be. The standard Cork performance. They're not going to get to those levels, but something close to it every game. From Tipperary's point of view, Cork's record against Tip and Thurles isn't amazing. Tip will be very confident of coming out with a result in their home games. They've played 2 away games now, is it? They've drawn one and lost one to Limerick, drew at Waterford, lost to Limerick. They have a home game against Cork. They win that. And they're certainly back in the championship. And with
losers out here, Chan, as well.
Losers out. It's winner take all. Exactly. A draw won't do either, Tom. It could potentially, but it'll really keep them alive depending on other results. But I for me, it again, like it was last week between Limerick and Cork, it's all about Cork here. I think Tipperary are due a performance. That they were so poor against Limerick for so long in that game. That's not Tipperary hurling, and Tipperary fans won't accept that level in Semple Stadium against Cork. I think it's a fascinating game. I'm really looking forward to both games this weekend for so many different reasons. To call the other one, a win for either, and they're in a Munster final. Like, pretty much for me. I know there's a round to go, but it'll be both teams' third game. Am I right?
Yeah. Well,
not technically.
Waterford will be more or less true at Clare. No,
in top 3.
All right. Because Clare win, they'll only be on 4 points.
They'll only on 4 points. Yeah.
But
It's Waterford, and that's Ennis as well. And Clare and Ennis, having lost to Limerick last time out, will be rampant for a victory. And you hate saying it, and you hate to bring it up. The Brian Lowe and Davy Fitzgerald element to it on the sideline will be even better watching the game. Maybe.
Yeah, Ryan and Paul Kinnerk, lads, move over. This is the real sideline show.
We've had the precursor. Now we have the main event.
This is the heavyweights now.
And it's but more importantly that is the sideshow. Funny enough, you think it is, but what's on the field there and what's at stake. And Waterford and Clare have usually cracking games. So we've 2 potential absolute belters at the weekend. For the second one, I mentioned for Tip in the first one. Right. I just think Tip at home.
Yes.
And like Cork will have to produce something akin to what they did. And Tipperary have a long run into this.
As well.
And I just don't see him. I think there's so much pride in Tipperary hurling that if they produce another performance like that, that's Liam Cahill gone in my eyes. I just don't see how he could survive. And not one for calling for managers' heads. I just don't see how he can survive if they didn't make the top 3 last year and they don't do it again this year.
They made the top 3 last year, but went out.
Went out to Galway at a fair point. They didn't make the Munster final last year. Was what I meant to say. Sorry. Given what was in their hands, a home victory over Waterford side that had produced nothing up to that point.
A real blip.
Real big time blip. And Cork, it's just the question is, can Cork, if Cork can produce 3/4 of what they did against Limerick, they're in with you'd make them favourites, but there's still a lot of ifs around Cork. Yes, they've got to that standard. Can they do it again? We'll find out. And the other one, it's a very tight one. I just edge for Clare at home because of that result against Limerick. They'll need to win at home to keep their championship probably alive, Tom. And it's both games are really in a sense winner take all. The Tip Cork one, as you said, is actually winner take all. The loser is out, where there's still a bit of wiggle room for the other 2 in the Clare Waterford game. Just think, with what Clare can do, I'm sure Davey will have something up his sleeve to throw at Clare, but it's a very difficult one for Davy Fitzgerald. I wouldn't say he enjoys playing Clare, as a Clareman, such a fervent Clareman himself. I wouldn't take he'll be gunning for everything Waterford to win. He'll take no pleasure in beating Clare. Might take a bit of pleasure in beating Brian Lohan, but on a wider scheme, I don't think that's in his MO to talk down on Clare in any which way. But yeah, that one's probably going to be Clare for me, and then sets up a great weekend at the end with Limerick and Waterford, and and the Tip Clare going to Tip, and the reality is, after those scenes, the great scenes, and look, Cork hadn't beaten Limerick in a fair old while. 2019 since they beat them in the championship. Limerick have handed out Cork a few tasty ones since. There was a fair amount of joy for Cork fans at the end of that game. This build onto the pitch, great celebrations, great to see. But if they lose, on this weekend, that's that for them. And again, like I said about Tipperary and Liam Cahill, could be it for Pat Ryan too.
Yeah, certainly could. Yeah, well, I probably lean towards Cork and actually Waterford. I've been nearly going the opposite here. So I'll tell you what, we know that one of us.
That's the point. That's great to see. You said earlier the home teams have advantage. Now you're saying both away teams.
I think Davy Fitz knows Ennis too well. No, but I think there's seems to be a bit of confidence about Waterford this year. Obviously, they beat Cork first day out and drew the last day. I just think the likes of Desi Hutchinson, if he didn't even hit his best form the last day, but was still very influential. If he
taking frees now as well.
Yeah, if he can get the accuracy up from frees and from plays, I think he made 4 or 5 wides the last day, but still was nearly one of the players to win them the game. So
the Waterford seem to have things right. It's a fair
yeah, they've certainly turned the corner. It's probably the easiest way to put it. And look, I think maybe Cork's momentum, I very very much see it as another tight Cork game. Like, they've been involved in 3 very, very tight games, and I just no reason to suggest they'll win easily, or indeed the Tipperary would. So I think that'll go to the wire. But I think maybe Cork, I think maybe the mood music is probably a little bit better from last week. And look at that, as Limerick saw in 2018, when people are maybe questioning, like Limerick, people were in Limerick from between 17 and 18. Once you get a bit of a roll, you can be a hard team to stop. So maybe they'll start their roll with that one. But we shall see. We'll wait in the long grass, as it were, for Sunday evening, and then we'll know the lie of the land for Limerick heading into the Waterford game on the 26th in the TUS Gaelic grounds. I'd say tickets selling fairly fast. People have certainly not lost the faith in the senior side just yet. John, just to briefly touch as well, Limerick's underage hurling teams brought their championships to an end. The 20s picked up a victory over Waterford, a narrow one it was, but a much welcome one for Evan Loftus and co. And the 17s, I think, edged out by a point a day earlier at McNeville Park by Tipperary. By all accounts, a much better performance from Shane Dowling's young men. And look, by no means a vintage season for Limerick at 17s and 20s, but I would love to stress the point that these are development age groups. We mentioned all those players who are kind of coming onto the Limerick team now. Aidan O'Connor, Adam English, even Colin Coughlin, who's on the bench. These guys, some of them won Munsters at minor and 20s and all the rest of it, but they didn't win All Irelands, and it hasn't held them back. I suppose that's the lesson here, that it isn't all about winning. It's about bringing on guys and getting their strength and conditioning done, getting them tactically astute for intercounty hurling. And look, hopefully we will see a lot of these guys in Limerick teams in the future years.
Absolutely, Tom. Yeah, I was at the minor games. My first time being at a minor game this year. Just the way things have worked out, I haven't been able to get to them. A lot of good things, a lot of very positive things. It was the work rate, I think, that maybe had from talking to people that were games that maybe had been down, but couldn't be said about Shane Dowling's team last Thursday. They gave everything, Tom. It was a game where Tipperary went 5-0 up, and given what had happened, given what had happened in other games and nature of defeats, it would have been a time maybe where as 15, 16, and 17-year-olds would have wilted, but very much not the case. They really thundered back into it, and unlucky not to get a result that could have, again, I don't want to be done on referees, but some of the decisions that went against Limerick, in that they're talking to even Tipperary people after game were kind of shrugging their shoulders, about certain things. But look, that happens, and whatever else about it. But yeah, I think there was a lot of positives to take from that performance for a lot of those players, and for the management as well. They asked for a performance from them. Speaking to a good few members of the backroom team and academy people, and Shane Dowling himself after the game, what they asked for was for the lads to give everything. They got exactly that. The result wasn't there, but Tom, to see the level of performance that they put in comparison, I think the score finished 13 points to 12. Limerick had 10 wides as well with it, so from their shooting statistics, which was so low earlier on in games, to even see that, and some very tight wides as well, that it could go either way. I just think the efforts put in, the pride that everyone involved in that team and management and academy had in that team for for the performance they put in, albeit in defeat. And look, we'll always talk about results, of course we will. But as you've mentioned, the overriding ambition of certainly all academies, I'm sure, is to create players for senior grade, and that's what they've been very good at doing. But yeah, look, to finish on the defeat still is disappointing. But I think they're a team that got better as the year went on. And that's a positive sign. There's certainly 4 or 5 players on that I think you'd certainly see a good few of them on the 20s, but we'll see where they go next. And as you said, I have to pause a second. Is that all right? Such an important victory, to beat Waterford. It was the 2 teams at the bottom of the table, but that, look, it's an important win for the academy. You don't want us to go through, what are you looking at, 8 games, between the two codes without a victory. It would have been a very poor year, results wise. And look, it is a results business too. We have to keep emphasizing that it is more to do with development, but winning helps development as well. No point saying it doesn't.
No,
You're not
winning
going to
is
win every game every year.
Winning is part of developing too, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Learning how to win,
Yeah, and that came from the, there wasn't an All-Ireland minor or in 2014, but so many that team had been so used to winning games where we were losing every game before that. But look, the 20s win for Evan Loftus and his management team, his first year at the 20s job, having had 1 year at minor, was a big step up for him as well. So I'm sure they would have learned a lot, and hopefully from both managements going into next year as well. So look, not the most pleasing, but to finish on that note for both sides with performances, 1 in victory, 1 in defeat, is a positive. And we'll see so many of these players back at 20s level and at 17s level, minor level next year. So maybe a year from a results point of view, not the greatest, but from a development point of view, we'll see in a few years how important this year may end up being.
Yeah, certainly. We'll see what comes out now in terms of next year's panel, and who's involved from between 17s up to 20s, as we saw a few this year. So we'll see how that one plays out. Before we move to football, we'll just stay on the stick and ball, as it were, but to mention Camogie, there's the under 16 A All-Ireland Championship. It's a group game, Limerick playing Cork. That is, as you can see there on screen, or if you're listening, that's Sunday the 19th. That's this Sunday, 2 p.m. in Cappamore. So an opportunity to get along to see the next generation of Camogie stars in Limerick in action against the Rebels, and that's Sunday. And also there's a confirmation earlier this week of a double header for the adult teams next weekend, that on Saturday the 25th of May, if my dates are correct there, yeah, I think it's the 25th, isn't it? Saturday the 25th indeed. Limerick versus Mayo in the junior championship, the opening round, and 2 hours later also at McNeville Park in the senior championship, Limerick facing formidable opposition in Kilkenny. So an ideal opportunity to get along to a double header in the new stand in McNeville Park and all the rest of it. So ideal setting, I guess, for such a double header. And just before I move to men's football, there's not an awful lot of ladies football at the moment in terms of a Limerick point of view, but one game worth mentioning, of course, is the LGFA, the Munster LGFA final. The Senior B Championship sees Limerick facing Cork in Mallow GA Complex this Saturday. That's May 18th. So an opportunity for Sean Kiley and Mike Flanagan to get some early season silverware, and indeed run the rule over a number of players ahead of the All-Ireland series starting, I think, in June. So best of luck to the lads and indeed the ladies involved in that one over the weekend. Now, John, we'll just turn to football. The Tailteann Cup got underway last weekend. It was, I suppose, there was one major shock, and it was in Limerick's group. It wasn't Limerick. It was actually London defeating Offaly. We'll come to those two teams in a minute. But Limerick's campaign, maybe, unfortunately, as we expected, after a losing start against it has been a strong and a resurgent downside who are within a score of the Ulster Senior Football Final. They got the better of Limerick, 14-point defeat in the end. Now, neither of us were in Nori, but I suppose we like reading reports and we like kind of picking up bits of information. Not Limerick's best display, but I suppose they could never really built up ahead of steam against Down, and unfortunately even finished with 14. They were much overrun by Down by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I don't think we're surprised with the Down victory, Tom. Maybe the margin of victory is what will probably be the most disappointing aspect of it, coming away from Park Esler. Yeah, it's very hard. Again, we didn't see the game, so it's very hard to fully analyze it. But from what I've read and what you've read, Down were the dominant outfit. The scoreline just tells you that straight away.
120 to 1-6. Yeah.
Yeah,
That was the actual score.
1-6 isn't going to get you any victory, Tom. It's not going to win you any game, and that will probably be the most disappointing aspect is that low score, But again, that being said, this disappointing as it may be, Limerick, you go to win every game, Tom. But the reality is, at times when a team is better than you, Down one score away from an Ulster final, Tailteann Cup finalist last year, a good league campaign. And you're promoted from Division 3 into Division 2 for next year, and an up and coming team. Their trajectory is going very much one way. So Limerick now with a home game against Offaly at McNeville Park this Saturday find themselves in the exact same position Offaly are in, and the exact same score that Offaly concede, a -14 scoreline. So London and Down topping the group with those victories, but Limerick only need a win over Offaly maybe, or London, and they're qualified, albeit in a way preliminary quarter final. I think I'm correct in saying so.
Yeah. Now, I'll just caveat that, John, by saying that there's only three of the 4 third place teams, because of New York are already in the hat.
Yeah,
so I suppose
true.
The scoring difference could be damaging, but I suppose if Limerick can pick up 3 points, win and a draw, or indeed 2 wins.
Given that both London, Offaly in the same group as them, the Limerick Down result didn't surprise anyone. Let's be frank about that. But the London Offaly one, Division 4 team defeating a Division 3 team, of course that can happen. But to defeat them by 14 points, and London have been ever improving in Division 4, and Offaly have kind of middled in Division 3,
14 points away from home as well.
Away from home, so that's a huge result for London, a massive result for London, and from the opposite spectrum, it's a massive result from Offaly for all the wrong reasons. So you just have to question where Offaly at, and I suppose we'll find out Saturday. We're both in McNeville Park for the game, and I think it's so hard to call. Like Offaly with a very tight victory over Limerick in the league earlier this year at O'Connor Park in Tullamore. Limerick with home advantage this weekend. Will that play a big deal? Limerick have played a lot of football in McNeville Park this year, so they know the place very, very well. Played a lot of football full stop in McNeville Park over the years, so you'd hope there's a bounce back in Limerick from that Down result. We haven't seen anything this year to sadly suggest that. I thought, coming from the Cork game, we may see. While I didn't expect Limerick to beat Down, I would have expected, and I'm sure Jimmy Lee would have expected plenty more from what was seen in Park Esler. But you have to regroup and focus on the next task, Tom. And Limerick will, albeit without a victory this year, will see Offaly as being a potential scalp. Although Offaly will still be playing their trade in Division 3 next year, where Limerick won't. And I think if Limerick can get themselves going, can get, it's a quick turnaround, a 7-day turnaround. It's not exactly, you may want another week to try and rejig things further. You can't. You know where you are at this stage. So neither team will be going into that game with a huge amount of confidence, Tom. That's the reality of it. But who's going to have more of the confidence? Offaly have beaten Limerick, so they'll probably have a slight edge. But Limerick have that home advantage, and they'll have to start making that tell. Maybe Limerick need to go a few points up in that game early, Tom, and still be leading going into the final quarter to have, given their confidence levels have to be low, after the margin of defeat last week.
So I think that the psychology coming to this one is interesting. Obviously, Limerick haven't won a game all year. Now, Offaly haven't won too many either. I think they only beat Limerick and indeed Wicklow in the league themselves. So the psychology I'm more referring to though is what happened last weekend. Limerick went up to Down, probably deep down. They probably knew, look, we're probably going to be second best here, but I don't think anyone saw the London result coming in, the manner of it. I mean, like, you know, that's either going to do one or two things. It's going to give Offaly going to have a great reaction, or it's just going to go from bad to worse for them. And obviously, we hope that Limerick can capitalise on that.
From the outside looking in, Tom, which result are you more surprised at? And that reality is the Offaly London one.
Yeah. It's
so does that,
the margin of it,
again,
especially. Yeah.
We'll find out maybe Saturday. We will find out exactly what reaction there is to it. But for that kind of level of surprise, and especially given the game was on in Offaly, you know, it does point to, again, open to correction on this, it does point to Offaly being, maybe there's a bit of trouble in that camp to be so far off the pace for such an important game. You win that game at home, you have to win your home games in this level of competition.
Yeah.
And for that not to be, okay, you lose a game by 1 or 2 points, you can go, didn't happen for us here, didn't happen for us there, but to lose by that margin, you know, against a team you're expected to beat and expectations, and okay, you can go into a game complacent, but complacently doesn't get you a 14-point defeat, Tom. That spells something else to me on that front.
Yeah.
We're down, or probably, to me, one of the favourites to win the Tailteann Cup. So Limerick,
they most certainly are, yeah.
You know, so Limerick maybe last year would have been seeing themselves in that candidate. I don't think, given what we've seen this year, that they're at that level yet. And maybe if they can get something rolling against Offaly, you may be talking, if they can qualify out, you don't know what can happen. But just you'd wonder at that result from Offaly's point of view.
Yeah, you most certainly would. Yeah, I suppose the Limerick performance not helped by no point from play. Then Peter Nash's goal, the only score Limerick got from play, and Jamie Bainham, I think, who would come on as a sub, was also sent off as well for a challenge on a down player. So I suppose a couple of things didn't go to plan there naturally enough. So I suppose things probably will be a lot better this weekend. I think they're much more evenly matched with Offaly, so I think they'll quietly fancy their chances, albeit, as we keep kind of saying, Limerick haven't won yet this year, but I think there was only a point in it in the league when, you know, many people probably thought Limerick were kind of done and dusted in the league, but they roused themselves to push Offaly all the way in Tullamore. So yeah, hopefully, as I think the home advantage point is well made, and you know, hopefully there's a decent support for this Limerick team that's, I suppose, realistically in transition and trying to find its feet. So yeah, a win here could maybe transform things for the short term anyway, and yeah, we shall see. So 3 p.m. On Saturday for Jimmy Lee's men, and we'll see what comes out with the starting 15 and who makes it, and maybe who's maybe back up to fitness as well for this one. So we'll see how that one comes. John, the under-20s played their All-Ireland B semi-final. I chatted to a couple of people who were actually at this. That was in Thurles Saturday afternoon. It probably went under the radar. Now, I know we mentioned it last week, but so much Gaelic Games activity on Saturday, not to mention, of course, the senior hurlers. But a game Limerick started brightly, got 2 goals, I think, in the first half, and even early in the contest, through Emmett Richter and Dara Murray. I told you Emmett Richter would play with the 20s, John.
Yeah, you had that hang on, Tom.
Yeah, but you know, I suppose he's one now that will revert to the seniors, so that's a plus as well for Jimmy Lee for Saturday. But Limerick just probably weren't able to build on it, and I was told Limerick did keep their shape quite well in the second half, and when they had a lead or when they were in you know, a couple of points behind. But in fairness, by all accounts, Westmeath kicked some great scores. You know, it wasn't a systems failure from Limerick. It wasn't ineptitude or anything like that. It was just, you know, maybe sometimes you're beaten by a better team, and it sounded like Westmeath were accurate in what they did. And look, you have to tip your hat sometimes to that. And look, overall, a decent year for the 20s. I'm sure they'd loved an All-Ireland final appearance, but I suppose we must look at it that Mayo were beaten in the other semi-final, and you know, Mayo as a county would have probably have had ideas of winning Connacht A and maybe going toe to toe for the All Ireland A title, and they couldn't qualify either. So you know, it's difficult, but yeah, I suppose a decent showing from the accounts I got of the game anyway by Limerick against Westmeath.
Yeah, same as you. I again reading only on it. Wasn't at the game, but yeah, we said it last week, Tom. You as I said, you got Emmett Richter called bang on, and it was probably the right call, as you said last week, for him to finish out his time at 20s in an All-Ireland semi-final and hoping to help bring Limerick to a final. Yeah, great start with his goal. I think it was the first score of the game. his goal. Certainly, I had a text from you fairly quickly after it happened. But
yeah. Well, actually, sorry, I heard about the goal. It sounded like ridiculous. He picked up the ball like 35, 40 meters out and just asked the Westmeath defence to get out of the way.
and they obliged
roofed it from there.
And I've seen Emmett do that a couple of years ago with Newcastle West in a Munster final.
Yes.
Munster semi-final against
In the same venue, actually.
Commercials in Thurles. Likes to play in Thurles, does Emmett.
Yeah.
Look, Tom, it's a shame they're not in an All-Ireland final. Of course it is. That, as you said, I heard the same things, that it was just basically Westmeath were the better team, and there's no shame in that. That's sometimes, if a guy is better than you, you can try everything to knock him off his game, but ultimately if he's able to kick ridiculous scores and superb scores, which I heard a lot of Westmeath scores were, it's certainly in the second half, you hold your hands up and go, we were beaten by the better team. I'm sure Shane Kelly did that after the game. But you've hit the nail on the head. It's progress, Tom, at these grades. Yeah, Limerick are definitely making progress under Shane Kelly. The more games they had this year, the better they got. And that just shows you that the reformatting of the under-20 competition in football this year is a positive. We went from 2 games from Limerick last year, victory over Waterford and defeat to Cork in the Munster semi-final, to going to 4 games of Munster and 1 then in that, So you can only just say, 3 games of Munster and then one of that. Am I right in saying that? The Munster B final as well.
Yeah,
4 games of Munster.
Final, 4 games of Munster.
5 games. So 3 extra games will bring those players on so far. And you do have the likes of Emmett Richter and Aaron Neville on the outskirts. Well, Emmett Richter starting for Limerick at senior level already, as well as being still 20s. Darren Murray has played for Limerick seniors last year and was around the panel earlier in the year as well. Aaron Neville, as I mentioned, who was captain of that 20s team, has played senior football with Limerick this year as well. And there will be more. You've the likes of Craig McInnes in goals, who's a big prospect, and Limerick may need the likes of him sooner rather than later to make the step up. But plenty of positives, and it's not silverware at an All-Ireland level, but from a Munster B, point of view, Limerick aren't going to win Munster A against, given the strength of Kerry and Cork, and the relative strengths of Tipperary and Clare at the moment either. Certainly Clare, whatever about Tipperary, but to come away with some silverware gives confidence. There was silverware last year at minor, silverware at 20s this year, and I said that about the Camogie as well recently, from the 16s and minors up to the juniors, and now the seniors performing. Everything's linked, and I'm sure that's the plan for the Limerick Limerick as well. We'll mention as well, the minors are out against Fermanagh this weekend in a B competition too. So it's where Limerick football's at, and that's the reality of that. It's a shame they're not in an All-Ireland B final, but I would imagine that the 5 games they played this year will have brought those players on a huge amount. So you just hope that the powers that be within Limerick football see that progress is being made at certainly at 20s level, that the likes of Shane Kelly and his backroom team, and Shane, of course, has been involved with the senior setup at Limerick under Billy Lee as well. You'd like to see him continue in that role, as a segue up to senior level. He knows all these players now. He's had them for 2 years in some cases, and you'd like to see a third year, certainly, with Shane developing these players for senior level. And, I certainly, from what I've seen of him on the sideline, there's no better man to do that job.
Yeah, certainly. It's I suppose this as disappointing way to end the year, but it's such as championship. You either end up with a defeat or you're the champions. It's there's no other way around it, really. You mentioned briefly there, John, the minors. This lovely poster provided by the GA for their brand new Tier 3 preliminary quarter final. It's a new competition, I suppose. Limerick, because of where they finished in the Munster Phase 1 at minor level, are gone into this Tier 3, and look, it's no escaping it. That's probably where Limerick belong, but they're playing the men of Fermanagh, the youngsters of Fermanagh. That's in the Connacht Centre of Excellence in Beacon, which is in County Mayo, I think. A venue that actually, I was up there a few months ago myself, and they were playing Leitrim in a challenge game up there, so a venue that they're not strangers to either. So that's coming up this Saturday, 2 p.m. throw in there. So finally, John, the GA have realised, and you mentioned it there with the 20s, and they've realised that tiered competitions are the way forward, because they're
the only way forward for football, Tom. You know, you've I mean we
Such a
started
disparity
seeing,
between top
yeah.
and bottom. You know,
Look, I've no issue with Munster Championship still being played. Actually, the GA could have a look at what the Camogie and ladies football boards do with Munster, with provincial championships. Everyone is at the same level All Ireland. They're at the right level at All Ireland level in the LGFA and Camogie. And you filter down to the underage competitions, they're tiered competitions. And I think maybe the GA are starting to take a leaf out of that book. Certainly at senior level, it needs to happen, Tom. Play the Munster Championship either before or after the league. And I'm talking about Munster, same at Leinster. The only probably competing competent, I'm going to say, actually, championship is the Ulster one. And, you know, they're all around tier 1 or like Division 1, Division 2 in the main. Now down adding to that. So they're all at that level anyway. So they're going to be playing a lot. You
I
could
think
probably
maybe
make that league.
Fermanagh and Antrim. Sorry,
Yeah.
Fermanagh and Antrim probably only two outside the top
Are the two way.
16.
And you see the results marry that with Fermanagh and Antrim this year.
Yeah.
I think the Ulster Championship is the only viable championship of the four at this stage. So something needs to be done. You know, I certainly don't think leave hurling, Munster and Leinster alone, leave the hurling championship alone. I think it's fine.
Yeah,
but
the hurling has had its tiered systems now for quite a while with Christy Ring and
absolutely,
Joe McDonough and Lowry Maher and all the rest of it. Yeah.
Teams get the chance to earn promotion, as we mentioned earlier. That Carlow, you know, that Carlow performance against Kilkenny at home the last weekend tells you that something's working on that level. That Carlow to put in a performance like that to draw up the All Ireland champions 3-4 years ago, Tom, that would have been unheard of. We're seeing how improved Antrim have become. Kerry are getting better again. You know, these teams and the underlings of hurling are getting there. In football, that needs to be tiered. Look, they have it with the Tailteann Cup. It's a procession in both now. I know Louth put in a great performance against Dublin, the Leinster final the weekend. It's still lost. I know if Dublin had probably wanted to, and that's not being disparaging towards George Brennan and his Louth team, Dublin could have upped the pace at any time, really. And, you know, was it more of a training session for Dublin? It probably was. And that's, again,
19 out of 20, 19 out of 20 provincial. Even Kerry don't have that dominance in Munster.
And, you know, like the reality in Munster, Kerry are a level above. Clare, for large periods of the Munster final, you know, were put in a very good performance, competent performance. And then you have Galway Mayo pretty much every year with Roscommon thrown in every so often.
Depending on the draw, of course.
Yeah, and then Sligo thrown in every other so often after that. So I think these tiered systems that are happening at underage grades now, but it's following a provincial championship, Sam. I think at this stage, you know, certainly Gaelic football needs to move away from those provincial historical things, because they're gone. You know, we all see the realities of it now, where Kerry dominate Munster, Dublin dominate Leinster, Galway or Mayo win Connacht, and then it's a crapshoot in Ulster, which is fantastic. And Donegal doing it this year, you know, and Jim McGuinness's return in a penalty shootout, very exciting game.
Yes.
But the league is where currently in Gaelic football, it's the league is where it's at, and then you play the provincial championships, and then you have the real business then of the Sam Maguire Cup, you know, and even then, you know, there's a bit of ridiculousness with the amount of games in that too. For me, I mean,
24 games to lose 4 teams. I think
lose 4 teams, and the same with the Tailteann Cup. Let's be frank about it. You know, there should be 2 teams from each group.
They're losing 5. They're losing 5 there in that one.
Yeah, you know. So I mean, it's
no, I agree.
It's hard to kill, and you know, I look. There's more. The other side of it is there's 31 to 33 teams. I think is it.
That
with London,
football, as it were,
London, New York, and no Kilkenny. So yeah, you have to manage something, and you don't want teams season finishing, you know, in mid-June. But mid-June, January to mid-June is 6 months, you know, and that's what the split season's all about for me. So I just don't see a future for where we are at adult level, and it's been spoken about at much higher levels than me and you talking on this podcast. But it's quite clear that the tiered competitions have been a success at minor. 20s has been a success this year. There's an even further competition, you know, after the provincial, which is fantastic for these teams, because all lads want to do, all any of us want to do is play games. To get all the training work you put in to play 2 or 3 games for a year is scandalous at underage level. So I think it's blatantly obvious that something needs to be done at provincial level at adult grade.
Yeah. And what this was, just looking at minor football, and obviously Limerick didn't have a great Munster Championship, but it's given them another bite of the cherry. But what will happen now is a county like Limerick, Fermanagh, I can't even think of who else is in the actual grade, but one of those counties are going to win an All Ireland that they wouldn't have previously even come
Fantastic. Yeah.
dreaming about, and just to touch on the senior provincials that we were looking at, I think the statistic could be slightly wrong with the number, but Kerry contested when they played Clare, contested and indeed won their 109th Munster senior football final appearance. They've won, is it 70 plus? They've lost probably whatever that is, 40 odd, 50. In the other semi-final before Kerry beat Cork, you had Waterford and Clare, and if Waterford won, it would have been their third Munster final. Bear in mind now that they've partaken probably in nearly all of the 100 and odd iterations of the Munster Senior Football Championship, and given it straight knockout, law of averages would suggest that they'd probably eventually get into a final once and every so often, but actually no, they don't, because
the standard is what it is. Yeah,
it is what it is. Yeah,
and they beat Tipperary this year, which was a huge result for Waterford. But
of course,
that result, as much as the work has been put in Waterford, as we both know, we've seen people involved there doing everything they can to bring Waterford to a different level. With Aoife Fitzgerald and Tony Lean as well being involved with the minors for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But the reality is Waterford aren't going to be challenging for Munster. Limerick aren't going to be challenging for Munster. No. Tipperary aren't. You have a combination of Clare, who lost so many players in the off-season, were still able to beat, Waterford and give Kerry a good run for their money. And Clare could be a very difficult team to face, in the rest of that competition. But it's just not going to happen. Louth have a previous Leinster performance where they were, against Meath, and I think it was 2010, and that's the one. Of course, where Dublin didn't win.
Yeah, the only one.
The only one of the 20. So I think the writing's on the wall for that. You can promote football all you want at the top level and say it's this, that, and the other, but it isn't what they believe it is. And of course, you have the product as well, Tom, and it's all about the product. We spoke about the Limerick Cork game at length and how much it had everything. So, look, football purists mightn't like it, but you see a football game in comparison once in a blue moon. There's always something to offer in hurling. For some of the football we've seen in the provincials this year, it's left a lot to be desired. Let's be frank and honest about it.
Yeah,
you may not agree, but it's the truth. You might like
it. There isn't that chaos that there once was.
No, there isn't. Myself and yourself, Tom, we cover a lot of Gaelic football. Huge fans of the game for what it is, and we see a lot of it. But I mean, you can call a good game and a bad game, and the majority of bad games of football we're now seeing so often the disparity between the two teams is so stark that it's the result going into the game. And as good as Clare were against Kerry in the Munster final, you always knew Kerry were going to have enough to the days of a shock like they had in 92, 93 or 91, wherever it was. Clare beating Kerry on a one-off day where Limerick had the chances to do it in the early turn of the century, having had good underage teams coming through. Those days are gone, sadly, now. That Kerry, because of the amount of players they produce, talking only about Munster, and Cork to a lesser extent, they're going to continue to dominate at these grades, and that filters through to senior as well. So that's not going to change anytime soon.
No, it certainly does filter through. Yeah, and look, I suppose we'll see how the minors fare out. Hopefully, they have found their level as Water finds its level. Hopefully, they have found their level, and we'll hopefully have just a bit too much for Fermanagh, but we'll see how that one goes on Saturday afternoon. That competition, I should say, is a straight knockout competition. So prelim, quarter final, then they'll be into a quarter final, obviously semi and final. Hopefully, as they progress through it. So we'll see how it fares out. John, I think we've covered it all. An extended version this week. We'd loads to unpack in that hurling game. We'll obviously touch on Limerick and Waterford next week. We'll get into the teeth of that one, and hopefully the picture for Limerick will become very clear after Sunday evening, and hopefully we'll be looking at a first victory indeed for the footballers of 2024 in what has been a testing enough couple of seasons for the footballers, but hopefully that we can keep the faith against the faithful and pick up a Tailteann Cup victory on home soil. So John, thanks very much for your company this week. Thanks for those of you out there for listening.